Hello and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into what might just be the single most important number in all of global trade. Seriously, it's this hidden code that could dictate taxes, it ensures our safety, and it keeps literally trillions of dollars in goods moving across borders every single year. So let's pull back the curtain and see exactly how this thing works.
Okay, just picture this for a second. Before 1988, you're trying to ship a product. And depending on where it's headed, that one product could be described in up to 17 different ways. Is this a revolver? Or is it just an article of base metal? You know, this wasn't just about words. This confusion created epic delays. It started trade disputes, and it cost businesses an absolute fortune. It was total chaos.
All right, to make sense of all this, we're going to break it down into 4 parts. First, we'll see how a universal product language was created. Then, we'll decode what I like to call the product passport. After that, we'll get into why this is such a high-stakes numbers game. And finally, we'll look at the rules everyone in the game has to play by. So how in the world did we go from complete trade chaos to everyone speaking a common tongue? Well, let's dive into the system that brought some much-needed order.
The whole journey really began back in the 1970s. The World Customs Organization, or WCO, knew this was a huge problem and started looking for a fix. It took more than a decade of work, but in 1983, the Harmonized System Convention was finally adopted. And then, in 1988, it officially went live, creating a single global standard for pretty much everybody.
So what is this harmonized system, really? Well, think of it like an international dictionary for stuff. It gives a unique number, a code, to every single product you can think of. So a customs agent in Germany, an importer in Brazil, and an exporter in Japan are all speaking the exact same language when they're talking about a product.
And listen, this is not some small niche system. We're talking about over 180 countries and customs territories using it. It covers more than 98% of all merchandise that's traded around the world. So bottom line, if you are moving a physical product across a border, you are using an HS code, period.
Okay, so now we know why it exists. But how does this product passport actually work? I mean, how can a string of numbers describe everything from a live chicken all the way to a high-tech microchip? Let's break it down.
Let's build a code together. We'll use a simple men's cotton t-shirt for our example. The system works like a funnel, starting really broad and getting more specific. The first 2 digits are the chapter. For our t-shirt, that's chapter 62. That means articles of apparel, not knitted or crocheted. Right now, that's a huge category. It could be anything from a business suit to a winter scarf.
Right, let's get a little more specific. We add 2 more digits, which gives us the 4-digit heading. By adding 05, we get 6205. And just like that, we've narrowed our search from all non-knitted apparel down to just men's or boys' shirts. See, we're getting closer.
And finally, we add 2 more digits to create the internationally recognized 6-digit subheading. So, 620520 tells customs officials everywhere that these are men's shirts made specifically of cotton. This 6-digit code is the universal standard. It means the same thing in every country that's part of the system.
And this chart here just shows you how it all fits together. You see the chapter, heading, and subheading. Those first 6 digits are universal. But, and this is a really key point, countries can add more digits, sometimes up to 10 or even 12, for their own national purposes, like setting specific tax rates or gathering data. So remember this, the first 6 digits are global, but the rest are local.
Now, this might all seem like just a bit of administrative paperwork, but getting this number wrong, oh boy, that can have massive consequences. Let's see how this all turns into a very high-stakes number game. So why does this one code matter so much? Well, for starters, it directly determines the duties and taxes you're going to pay. It's also what confirms your product meets local safety rules and has all the right permits. Getting the code right is what keeps your shipments from getting stuck at the border, and it helps you avoid some really painful fines. And, on a bigger scale, it's what lets governments track trade and make economic policy. It's kind of a big deal. And here is where you can see how classification literally turns into money. Let's say you're importing a big container of rubber gloves. If they're classified as medical gloves, hey, your duty rate might be 0%.
great. But if they're classified as industrial gloves, suddenly you're paying a 5% duty. On a huge shipment, that's a ton of cash, and it all comes down to picking the correct code. And the risks here are absolutely real. This quote from the logistics giant Kuhn + Nagel really says it all. A mistake isn't just about paying too much. It can lead to massive penalties, huge fines, and in a worst-case scenario, your goods can actually be seized by customs or even destroyed. The stakes just couldn't be higher.
Okay, so given those risks, you obviously can't just guess. Classification is a legal process, and it's governed by a very specific set of rules. So let's take a look at how you're supposed to play the game.
Ah, yes. This is the classic problem every classifier runs into. What do you do when your product seems to fit perfectly well into 2, or maybe even 3, different categories? Is an electric shaver a shaver, or is it a domestic appliance? How on earth do you decide?
Well, the answer is in something called the General Rules of Interpretation, or the GIRs for short. These are the 6 official internationally recognized rules that basically give you a legal step-by-step instruction manual for how to classify any product. And these aren't suggestions, they are the law of the tariff.
The GIRs pretty much work like a set of tiebreaker rules. Rule 1 always says to start with the actual words, the text of the headings. If it still seems to fit in a few places, you move on. Rule 3A tells you to pick the most specific description. So electric shavers is going to beat the much more general domestic appliances. Still a tie? Rule 3B says you have to find the component that gives the item its essential character. So in a hairdressing kit, that's the clippers, right? Not the comb. And if, after all that, it's still a tie, Rule 3C is the final fallback. The heading that appears last numerically wins.
This all leads to a very, very tempting and very dangerous question. If it seems like you have a couple of options, should you just pick the one with the lowest duty rate to save some money?
The answer is absolutely not. And I love this quote from the International Trade blog. It puts it perfectly. Trying to game the system by picking a code, whether it has a lower or even a higher duty rate, that isn't compliance. That's just wrong. As the blog says, 2 wrongs have never made a right. The goal is always to be accurate, not to get the financial outcome you want.
And that really brings us to the most important thing to remember here. The harmonized system isn't some set of loopholes you're supposed to exploit. It is the shared language that makes our entire global economy possible. Mastering it isn't about gaming the system, it's about communicating with clarity and with confidence across any border. It's the invisible grammar of global trade. Thanks so much for joining us for The Explainer.